The Spotrac Podcast, talking sports contracts, the salary cap, and business of sports.
Welcome to the Spotrac.com podcast. Kevin Sylvester, Paul Peck from BuffaloSportsPage.com with the founder of Spotrac.com, Mike Giannetti. It's his podcast, so we're going to talk about all sports here.
Yes, we always do, and Mike always gives us a nice variety of sports to talk about as it relates to sort of the latest news going on in the financial end of sports.
Yes. We want to mention, before we get into a couple topics today, at the end of this podcast, breaking
news. Big.
Big news. We might even get the Buckeye Newshawk Award breaking news sounder with Les Nessman. That's right. Yes.
Can we afford that?
I don't know if we can afford to say Les Nessman here from WKRP Cincinnati, but we're going to talk about two positions in two different sports and how they're paid and how maybe it's changed or perhaps how it's stayed the same.
Yeah, the positions that you normally wouldn't ever associate with each other, but that's what makes you so interesting, Mike, is that you figured out a way to equate NHL goaltenders and NFL running backs.
Who hasn't, right?
No, that's right.
No, it's really the ebbs and the flows, and it's one of those things that kind of running this site just kind of hits you in the face, you know? You sort of see the up and downs every year and with the free agent seasons and things like that, but really where it came about is just how important the goaltender is this time of year. I mean, Stanley Cup, the playoffs and the run to the Cup, it's all about the goaltender. The Capitals are a perfect example of this with how they literally started off the playoffs benching their number one goaltender, completely in question. The position was completely in question. They had no idea what they were doing game one to game two. And here we are, they're on the brink, and Holtby is arguably the MVP of the Cup.
He's the story. His saves, some of the more amazing ones, have been basically the story of what the Caps have done being on the brink of winning
and
the
that's
Cup.
An annual tradition, right? I mean, we're always talking about some goaltender who stood on his head, and that's the reason that we're here. And for a lot of years, decades, that was the case with the running back. It really was. I mean, we know we're in a passing game now, and it's a modernized football game, and you got to take head injuries out of it. So the running backs have just been, kind of pushed to the wayside in terms of their stardom. But I'm here with financially and with some numbers and some stats to sort of say, let's hold it a bit, because maybe you're not getting the Adrian Peterson $15 million a year anymore, but I don't think you need it. And I think positionally in sports, across all of the sports we cover, there's a lot to be said about paying that elite player anymore, because what we're going to talk about are things like depth and percentages of caps and things like that, just to kind of show that this has been trending for a long time and it's working. And where we're going to go with goaltenders is consistency, right? So there are numbers that we've got in terms of how the number one and the number two goaltender on teams have sort of played out to a winning formula. And really, I took a 7-year look at this, and there are almost no top-paid goalies anymore. Let's just start there. I mean, in terms of what we're looking at for next season, there's only, I think, 4 top 50 cap hits that are alleviate themselves to a goaltender, and that's going to diminish as we go because of what we're talking about here. Because GMs know this. They've known this for years now. The cap is not growing, I think, at the rate they thought it would be with this new CBA, and I think that's a big part of this. They just don't have the money to build a defense in front of a goalie and pay a goalie top dollar anymore.
But is the question on that, and Kevin, chime in here because you've covered the NHL for a long time, is it because the game has changed away from the goalie, or is it because most of the goalies are much more even now and the number one goalie isn't that much different than the 10th best goalie by anyone's parameters?
That to me is more than anything, because let's go back 20 years ago, all right? We're in Buffalo. Dominic Hasek, okay? Unbelievable. The guy was the MVP of the league. He arguably...
Twice did he win the Hart Trophy, right?
Twice. Arguably the best goalie of all time. Arguably. Because some will say, well, Patrick Waugh, because he won 3 cups, or Marty Brodeur, all Stanley Cups with the Devils. But, you go into a game... It was really how, those 3 guys, how am I going to beat those 3 guys, right? Let's just put those 3 in the conversation. But the coaching, teams might have had a goaltending consultant. now every team has a coach, right? It's not just a consultant. They have a full-time goaltending coach that works for their organization top on down. They're all taught the same. They're all built the same. They all play the butterfly position, all right? I mean, it's not Brodeur and Hasek were unique in their style, all right? Wah started to play the butterfly, but Hasek and Brodeur never coach how they played the game.
They did it by feel.
Right, they were just amazing players. But everybody else coaches the same style, all the video, all the things
the video scouting has allowed goaltenders to understand what the offensive players want to do to be in better. It's all about positioning, right?
Yes.
To be better positioned.
It's positioning, reading the play, and just getting yourself on that side. And equipment, the size of the equipment also has improved goaltending, in my opinion. They've reduced pads. They need to reduce pads some more. But those are certainly other issues. And I just want one other thing on the coaching. Mitch Korn, you want to look at the goaltenders that have played under Mitch Korn. Hasek's coach goes to Nashville. Pecorine goes to Washington. Holtby. Like Mitch Korn's a guy to follow. That guy should be a Hall of Fame goaltending coach of the goaltenders that he has had. But so yeah, the goaltenders are all similar and they're all good. They're all good.
Good enough.
Good enough.
Good enough. Good
enough.
enough.
I've maintained this. I've said this before, even on this podcast, and I've had general managers agree with this statement. You don't need a great goalie, but you need your goalie to play great.
That's right.
That's
right.
good.
So
That's good.
That's right. And how many Stanley Cups did Hasek bring the Sabres?
0.
Well, he brought him to one. Stanley Cup final. And it really, they were a team, but aside from Hasek, we pull Michael Pekka off that team.
Right.
Yeah.
And
the Sabres were 70% Dominic Hasek and 30% a bunch of guys who worked hard.
He won 2 cups in Detroit.
Right.
Correct.
In 2 different times. But this is the interesting thing. This goes to Mike's point and why I investigate this. One is the starter. And then the second one, he got benched for Osgood.
Yes.
Who's won a couple cups as a starting goaltender. And Osgood's the greatest example of a guy that you don't need a great goalie, but you need to play great, and that's Chris Osgood.
And to further this point, when he went to Detroit, he was there for less money. He was traded. He was on a big contract that expired. He signed for less. He signed for even less after that.
Yeah. Ottawa, the stint in Ottawa, and then back to Detroit.
Yeah, and I think that's the point, right? The point is, you pay a little less to that goal. You allocate a little less to the goaltenders, and you're able to pay big guys in front of him and a couple of big scorers. And here's what I did. I really broke down offensive spending, defensive spending, goaltending spending over an 8-year span. And, nothing really stood out like a sore thumb. There's obviously your outliers in terms of, a couple of teams that kind of went for it all and it worked, right? In terms of getting to the cup. The Blackhawks, a couple of years, they pumped money everywhere and it worked. But that's an outlier.
But when it came time to pay Niemi, we're not going to pay Niemi.
Right, and they're at the brink of possibly just a complete implosion in terms of that cap coming to 2018. So, it's a short window, which we're seeing in all sports. We're seeing that in the NFL with the Seahawks and teams like that, and hopefully with the Patriots soon. But the point here is, and it really goes to the 2 major sports I've keyed in on them, which is NFL and NHL. The point here is don't be top 10 in anything. If you're a GM and you're managing this, top 15 to top 10, that 10 to 15 line for where you're spending your offensive dollars, your defensive dollars, and definitely your goaltending dollars, you want to be right in the middle somewhere. You want to be a little bit above middle in terms of where your numbers are. You don't want to overpay for anybody in terms of one star in one position. And you certainly can't underpay unless you're, the Houston Astros and you kind of hit lightning in a bottle like we saw, the last 2 years here. But right in the middle with everything seems to be the most successful, consistent way to get yourself to the top. And
you just described the Patriots in a lot of ways. And here's where I want to not argue with you, but you take the money out of it for a moment. You talk to personnel. I know you can't. You talk to personnel people in any sport. They're like, you need great players. You can't win without great players. Yep. And ultimately, great players have to be paid like great players. So how do we figure that? You got to have great players. You got to have players who become some of the best in the league in what you're playing. Now, are you saying you don't ever pay them and you go get others? How do you juggle that?
You have to convince great players that enough is enough. in terms of the money. You have to. You have to, and that is the Patriots way.
Yeah.
You have to tell the wide receiver that you want that, yes, there's others making $16 million, but 12 is enough. And that's just how it has to be.
That's not an easy,
and a good GM
in this day and age. That's not easy
with
to
a plan in place, because you've got to have a plan. You've got to be able to tell these guys, if you take this contract here, and in 2 years we'll be here. We're going to have this guy next to you, and this guy. You've got to be able to lay out a plan financially to these guys, or to the agents, obviously, to sort of say, this is the reason we're going to come in $4 million less, and it's going to be successful, and we believe you're the right fit for this. So if I'm putting on my agent hat or my GM hat, that's what I'm saying. But the proof is in the pudding. I mean, it really is. There's only one team on the NFL side of this that brought a number one anything into a Super Bowl win in the last 8 years, is what I looked at. The Seattle Seahawks. That was it.
You mean number one ranked defense you're talking about?
That was it in terms of anything. I mean, the consistency with these players, these teams building 10 to 15 in terms of their offense, their defense. I'm talking cap numbers here. They have done a phenomenal job of just balance. It's all about balance. Nobody's too high, nobody's too low. And to your point, how do you get that? How do you make that happen? You just do it. You just do it. The Pittsburgh Steelers have done it for a long time.
And it takes us back to personnel, which is back to scouting, which is faith in your ability to acquire players so that you have a lot of good ones. And then if one is really good, but you don't want to pay him and he leaves, then you have the ability to replace him.
Okay, that's the next point. So we're talking a little Buffalo here. The Sabres were great for, 6 years? A good amount of chunk of time there, right?
Well, there's two periods where they in recent history where they were good. The Hasek era, and then post lockout,
post 2006.
But the base of every Sabres hockey team has always been goaltending.
It has.
Right? It's goaltending and scoring.
It has.
It hasn't been everybody thought Lindy Ruff was a defensive coach. That's incorrect. He always had great goaltenders. He had Hasek and Miller.
But I think we can all agree here, just having been close to it, that I think the detriment to the Sabres' ability to win and push through that wall was that they held on way too long to way too many guys. Way too long.
Sure.
And that's the part of this that good teams have figured out. That in order to keep that balanced cap structure, you've got to be willing to let guys go, whether it's trade, whether it's cut. But if X is getting too high on your balance line, or if he's demanding too much, he's out the door. Because you'll find two guys to replace him. And that's sort of where we're going here.
Well, the other argument with the Sabres is they hung on to the wrong guys.
Well, yeah.
No, I'm just
Yes,
that's something you can do. Because they weren't willing to pay two guys, Drury Briere, they ended up having to pay Vanek, who a good player.
More than he was ever worth.
Ever.
Correct.
And always
too soon.
Chase the replacements.
Yep. But yes, and that elevated other players on the roster, like Derek Roy, again, good players, but they weren't great players. You look at what Danny Briere did for the Philadelphia Flyers. They paid him for a reason. Guy's a playoff performer, right? And they paid him big. Now, the other thing, and this is the point about not paying guys way too much, the Rangers, who signed Drury, also signed Gomez, did not work out signing those two centers to huge contracts. There wasn't enough balance on that hockey club.
And the Rangers are a great example with this discussion because they've got that Lundqvist deal.
He's the guy,
the
highest paid goalie in next to Carey Price?
Carey Price.
It's Price now, but for years it's been Lundqvist, and they've seen little from that. I mean, let's be honest, they've been an up and down team. They've missed the playoffs with him.
Yes.
I mean, there's no guarantees at all in paying a goalie, and they're the proof in the pudding in terms of how that works. So, like I said, we're at a position now where, maybe the numbers are different. Obviously, they're different. I mean, obviously, the numbers in the NHL and the NFL are going to be different. But in terms of how these things sort of align parallel, the depth of the running back position and the depth of the goaltending position, which we've talked about here before, is really in sync, and it's something that has proven it can win. I mean,
you gave us some numbers, and I'm blown away by this. And as we spin this back to running backs in the NFL, not even the Steelers with Le'Veon Bell, the highest paid running back in the league by far, are allocating 10% of their cap to the running back position.
Right.
Tell everybody what the average is.
Yeah, the average cap allocation for a team's entire arsenal of running backs is 4.4%.
Amazing.
It's amazing.
Amazing.
That's a stunningly low number.
Now, I want to explain that. I want to explain that too, because somebody could be at home and go, "Wait a minute, these NFL teams are just drafted Saquon Barkley and Leonard Fournette last year," but that's in order to keep the costs under control.
I actually looked into that because I was worried that this draft was going to change it a little bit. The Giants only have 3% right now allocated, and that's without Barkley. So Barkley's only going to push them up to close to 5%.
Because rookies are cost control.
Yeah, and he's a high paid. He's one of the highest paid running backs in the league now.
As a rookie,
as the number 2 overall pick,
yeah.
But doesn't it? All right, but let me be a counter argument here to spending on these positions. Okay, so we can sit here and look at the Rangers and say, well, he spent all this money on Lundqvist. Well, when he got the contract, he was the best goalie in the world, and it's like, okay, that's your base. Like your skaters want to know that I got a guy who's going to stop the puck when I make a mistake, because you can go on the attack more if you have an outstanding goaltender back there. So I don't fault the Rangers for signing Henrik Lundqvist to that.
I do.
You do.
I do. And here's
what
are they supposed to do?
Get me the fourth best goalie in the world.
Yes, you've already made the right point. The right point is how much better is he?
No, the point, actually, the error for the Rangers and all the teams that signed is the length of the contract.
Yeah.
To me,
you're preaching to the choir over here.
Sign the goaltender to a 3 or 4 year deal max.
Any player
at
in the
max
NHL.
money.
Any player.
Like you get
it's got to be max money, or you're never going to get a star to commit to a shorter deal.
Well,
like that.
you know what? Someone's got to be Bolton. Then I'm going to move you. All right.
Yeah.
If I can move you, but to sign goaltenders to long-term deals is pointless. Because they are going to go through a
Ups and
valley.
Downs, yeah.
They're
Even when they're great, they're going to have bad years.
Correct. And there's always a young player who's going to. I mean, Holtby was a young unknown when he first came up. And was like, wow, who is this guy?
Yes.
And he was great and cheap.
Matt Murray.
Right, Matt Murray.
Corey,
who is he? Corey Crawford. When he won the first cup with the
these are all the latest cup winners.
Right,
one
Blackhawks.
One quick goalie aside, as I'm watching the Stanley Cup Finals,
and Tim Thomas. Let me throw Tim Thomas in. They brought him back from Europe at age 39, and he won the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, one quick thing I've noticed, and a lot of posts get hit, right?
It's a
and
bouncy game.
Announcers like Mike Emmerich, he hit the post, and
That's
I'm
a
like,
great
wait a
impression
minute.
of Doc,
Thank
by the
you.
way.
I'm like,
We'll
wait a
edit that
minute.
out.
I'm thinking about.
Doc
wait a minute.
meets Rick Jenneret there.
Yeah, I know. Why does everybody hit the post? And I started to think about it, and I'm like, I know why everybody hits the post so often. They're trying to be too precise because the goalies are so good at giving you only the top corner of the net to shoot at. So goal scorers have to have such a little area to shoot at. They're always shooting for the posts.
When's the last time you saw a goaltender in street clothes? Right?
Yeah.
And then you see them, and they look like they're putting on those
twice the
sumo
size.
suits you see at halftime at an NBA game, right? It's ridiculous. Manny Legacy, all right, former goaltender for the St. Louis Blues. Just Google a picture of him and his pads. Manny Legacy's about 5'9".
Yep.
His pads would fit a 6'8" person. They were ridiculous how big they were. But a lot of they need to reduce, and then go back and look at. Oddly enough, a Don Edwards puck is sitting right here. All right, my kid must have been playing with it. But anyways, Donnie Edwards, former goaltender, NHL, Sabres. And look at pictures of Don Edwards. Yep. Looks like he's wearing a shirt, right? With soccer shin pads compared to what's going on here. So, but anyways, goaltenders need to be protected with equipment, but they don't need to wear all the equipment that they're wearing.
That's right.
And that'll now the argument for goaltenders will make is like, well, take away the equipment. If I'm an agent for a goalie, like he's going to make less money, right? So there's a lot of forces at work here. Bottom line, to go back to it, I think you pay, and much like you look at the Washington Capitals defensemen, right? So I was going to make they pay Ovechkin, and that's why the Caps are winning the series. By the way, you can say it's Holtby. No, they have a superstar in Ovechkin playing up front. The Knights have a bunch of good players that are playing great as a team, and they had a goalie who's hot, but the Caps have a superstar. And they also have 4 defensemen making about $4.5 to $5 million.
Yeah, it's perfect.
Who block a lot of shots that never get to the goalie.
Because your fifth and sixth defenseman, if they play one shift a period, that's fine.
And I got to tell you, that's new for them. And to me, that is the one thing that took them up over the edge here.
Yeah, because they're paying Mike Green a ton of money, and Mike Green is the wrong guy to pay a ton of money to. Mike Green's a one-dimensional defenseman.
Even when he was great, you pay somebody like that, and you can't build around him. You can't do it. You can't put if you've got a number in line for how much you're going to pay your defense in a year, and you start there, well, there's not much left to fill in. And they found balance, and they put good, big, solid players at average cap hits in front of him, in front of Hopi, and look where we are. I mean, they're dominating. They're dominating.
Well, let's the Nashville Predators, by the way, figured that out with Shea Weber. Shea Weber is a heck of a player, but you know what? Let's get PK Subban, who's younger, faster, and can do similar things to Shea Weber. Maybe some things differently too. And they went to the Cup Finals last year.
Yep. If you look over recent years, those big contracts, man. It's hard pressed to find one that really worked out. It really is.
Yes, I guess the bottom line here, at least in hockey and probably in NFL too, and we'll just talk about these positions, but probably, well, now you'd fall in love with a quarterback. Cheerleaders do. Why can't we?
It's
but
the one
don't fall in
position
love
you
with your
can
players.
play.
Don't fall in love with your players,
right?
Especially in these positions where they're interchangeable. Goaltender, running back are interchangeable.
So here's sort of the parting shots on this, because you talk about the goaltender, you talk about the running back, right? We've sort of laid out the parallels here, but goaltenders really can't change. They can't evolve.
Correct.
Right? I mean, they've got a job. They've got to do it. If they do it well, they'll continue to make money. The running back position has evolved, and it's going to continue to evolve, I believe, based on the way the game is moving in terms of the passing game, right? So you're seeing these running backs becoming multi-leveled in terms of the weapons they're being used as.
Barkley was drafted as much for his pass catching ability as his running.
Jerick McKinnon got $7.5 million a year to go to the San Francisco 49ers. He was a backup in Minnesota, so obviously they're going to use him. In a lot of plays, in a lot of fashion. So it's coming. Is that going to translate to money? We'll see, because wide receivers are doubling running backs right now. They're flat out doubling them. The highest running back, not named Le'Veon Bell, is $8 million. The highest wide receiver is $17 million. So, and that's the trend in terms of percentages as well. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers have 20% of their cap to wide receivers right now, and 4% to the running backs.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's where we are. I mean, that's just the league. So you want to get money as a running back, you got to catch the ball. You've got to get yourself into plays, more plays than first and second down. And I think we're getting there. And it's going to beg the question, because we've seen tight ends, their money's gone way up. The more they become in the passing game, the Gronkowskis and the Grahams and them have really set that trend. Are we going to a place where if you can catch the ball, you're worth $15 million a year? Are we going
no
to that
matter
place?
what position you play?
Yeah. Are we going to the weapon position?
Well, isn't that the McCaffrey kid in Carolina?
There's a lot of teams doing this. Kamara, McKinnon. I mean Barkley, obviously. Bell, Ezekiel Elliott. I mean, there's a lot of teams that have sort of set themselves up for maybe one guy who can do everything, and then some pieces around him. Obviously, that's the way the Eagles and the Rams have been successful, and the Seahawks really to boot kind of started this, but. This spread offense where everybody sort of gets a piece, but nobody gets too much of the pie, and to me, that's how the game in terms of the on-field game looks, and I think that's exactly how the financial game should work as well.
Boy, how much would Thurman Thomas and Roger Craig be worth today, right?
Emmitt Smith, first running back to ever have 1,000 yards rushing and receiving in the same season. Yeah,
I always thought Roger Craig. He was more of the, he was the first guy, I thought, to catch passes out of the backfield with regularity. Then Thurman with the Bills. And then James Wilder with the Bengals.
I'm thinking of James Brooks.
James
Yes. Short, little
James Wilder
guy.
was the Buccaneers.
James Wilder was a big 230-pound running back.
I'm thinking of
I was a Barry Sanders guy, man. Barry Sanders was the thing to watch. And he
never
did
caught the ball a ton.
Enough. I mean, he was a screen pass guy a little bit, but he did it right, didn't he? Get in, get famous, get paid, and get out.
Right.
Yeah. And I think either the players at running back are going to choose that route, or the teams are going to say this. That's what I'm saying. Draft them high, get 4 years out of them, 5 years out of them, and get them out.
Yeah. Goodbye.
Get the other one. Too much tire. Tread off the tires.
All right. Before we depart today, I don't think we need the Buckeye Newshawk breaking news thing
You
anymore.
sure? You don't want me to do that sound effect again?
I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
I think some people stopped listening, actually, when he did it the first time. So, but Mike has some big news concerning Spotrac.
We do, yeah. The day is finally here, sort of, for most of you. We've been promising this for months now, and we're finally able to say that there is an iOS app available in the iTunes App Store. So those of you on iPhones and iPads and things like that, you can go and download the Spotrac app,
which is about 75% of mobile users.
Yeah,
maybe even more.
Yeah, we sort of went with the percentages in terms of how we started this. We do have an Android one in the works. It's sort of being hashed out still, but it'll be similar to the Apple one. So if you're able to get on an Apple product and download our app, please click around. Please let us know what you like, what you don't like, what we're missing. Obviously, we're going to keep building this thing out as it goes on. Those of you who are Spotrac Premium subscribers, there's all the bells and whistles that you have on the website in terms of the past contracts. And we built a new feature for our premium members. If you are logged in on the app, we have a favorites tool. So you can kind of go to your players and your teams that you follow the most. You can bookmark them, and you've got a favorites list that you can access right from the start of the app, and you'll be able to quickly get to those things on the app. So hopefully it's a better experience. It's quicker for you. It's a little bit less hassle, and you can obviously take it with you as you go.
So you just go to the iTunes store and you look at Spotrac.
Spotrac. That's it.
And it'll pop right up to download.
Free download, free to use. Like I said, if you're a premium subscriber, there's a little bit more to it. If you like it, leave us a review. Rate it, obviously. If you don't like it, let me know why.
Yeah.
I'm on it now, messing around with it. It took just a couple seconds to download. It is great. It's easy to move around. The menus are good. You can go through teams. You can go through players, free agency. Everything is there. It is everything that you get on the desktop version, but a lot easier and quicker to move around, including the always exciting trending section.
That's right. And our podcasts are there as well, so you can listen to the Spotrac podcast on the app itself. And big shout out to Scott Allen, our sort of man behind the scenes with everything. He put in endless hours on this, kind of figuring out how this was all going to come together. And I'm really happy with the initial launch here. Like I said, we'll keep on it. We'll keep building to it and updating things as we need.
So despite what you just said about not paying the highly talented people, Scott's going to get a nice boost out of this whole deal.
I don't know how highly I pay him.
You know what? IT guys interchangeable too. They're
they are
running
okay.
backs.
They're like running backs? Okay, gotcha.
Brutal.
Good luck with that.
I'm kidding out there. All right. Well, that's awesome. Make sure you download that. Make sure you give us a rating, by the way, in the
let us know.
iTunes podcast section there. So let us know what you like. And if any topics, by the way, anything you want us to discuss in the podcast, send Mike a message via Twitter on the Spotrac feed there, or an email, what have you, on the app. Again, let us know everything for you. All right, for Mike Giannetti, the founder of Spotrac.com, get the app today. For Paul Peck, he's going to have an app before dinner today.
I already gave Mike my stars.
All right.
I'm not going to tell him how many. See if he's nice to me.
I'm Kevin Sylvester. Thanks for listening to the Spotrac.com podcast.